Takeaways from the Biden-Xi summit, where low expectations were met. President Joe Biden's summit with China's President Xi Jinping south of San Francisco Wednesday may have closed a trapdoor under the world's most critical diplomatic relationship, which has plunged to its most acrimonious level in 50 years. But with expectations set so deliberately low and with each side having significant incentives to declare the meeting productive, it was hardly an achievement that the mood music was upbeat after 4 hours of talks, punctuated by a lunch of herbed ricotta ravioli, tarragon roasted chicken and almond meringue cake. Biden came away hopeful that he had eased the risks posed by U.S. and Chinese forces operating in perilously close quarters in the Asia-Pacific, which he wants to avoid escalating into yet another politically ruinous global crisis during his re-election bid next year. Xi needed to make a statement to his domestic constituency in the communist hierarchy that he has vital U.S. relations under control at a time of economic strife. He also needed to send a signal that China now sees it in its interest to de-escalate tensions with other major powers, especially the U.S., after a fraught chapter. Yet the important but incremental progress made at the Georgian revival-style mansion will do little to mitigate the underlying factors driving the U.S. and China toward a more dangerous rivalry. Styling his approach to Xi as trust but verify, Biden explained after the summit that while China and the U.S. were in a competitive relationship, my responsibility is to make it rational and manageable, so it doesn't result in conflict. That's what I'm all about. Xi, while arguing that the world was big enough for both the U.S. and China to coexist, warned that the United States should not scheme to suppress or contain his country, expressing Beijing's belief that the U.S. desire to compete with its rising rival is really aimed at thwarting China's rightful destiny. That's a disconnect that a single summit had no hope of redressing. The two leaders are talking again. An agreement to re-establish contacts between the U.S. and Chinese militaries may be the most important thing Biden does this year. Vital miscalculations on either side can cause real trouble with a country like China or any other major country, Biden told reporters. The potential for U.S. and Chinese naval or air forces to stumble into an incident over or on the South or East China Seas is one of the nightmare national security scenarios that keeps officials and foreign policy analysts awake at night. The United States has, therefore, been trying for months to restore communication severed by China after then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan last year. The Biden administration is worried about scores of what it calls unprofessional operations by Chinese planes and ships near U.S. assets. For instance, a Chinese fighter came within 10 feet of a U.S. Air Force B-52 bomber last month. A downing of a U.S. plane or a collision between ships could set off a dangerous escalation that would be difficult to defuse, not least because of fraught political reactions it would unleash in both countries. The emergency landing of a U.S. spy plane on Hainan Island in 2001 after a collision with a Chinese fighter took days of intricate diplomacy to resolve and return the crew. China is now far more aggressive, nationalistic and powerful, and a similar incident would be even more combustible.